All right, welcome to day 2 this week on January 20th or 21st. This is Mr. Gallagher. We're focusing on two things, our virtual service project and this idea of leadership and humility. So let me share my screen and tell you what we talked about today. First of all, we went over the questions and this idea of humility. What are two leaders that you admire for their humility and why? And what does it mean to be a person of humility? Why is humility so important for a leader? And I gave you an opportunity to do those in your journal. And we talked about that in class today. And really, it's important that you understand why you think it's important, not me. But I think humility is important. We talked about people like Gandhi, George Washington, talked about their parents. Everybody had a different leader that they admired for humility. And I think a lot of people also talked about this idea that humility is so important in following somebody, because you don't want to follow someone who's going to be arrogant or doesn't think your voice matters. So humility is important for a leader, especially because if they want other people to follow them, if they're not humble, they're in big trouble. So we reviewed that as a class. Then we read this passage of scripture, Luke 14, 7 through 11, because we talked about Jesus being someone who is humble and actually extolling the virtues of being a humble leader. In Luke 14, it says, when he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you're invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you'll be honored in his presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And we talked about these questions for this passage. Why was Jesus saying, was talking about what we were talking about, that Calcutta paradox of, the first shall be last, the last shall be first. Why is it important to be a humble leader and seek the welfare of others rather than yourself? And often Jesus talked to the Pharisees, who were so often wanted to be at the head of the table. And Jesus is saying, no, you shouldn't want that. You should come in and take the last seat. You should, when there's food out on the table, let other people go first. Just that idea of caring about other people. It was part of his instruction. And it requires trust on our part, that we're going to have to trust that we're going to be okay, that we'll be taken care of also. And finally, why is it leaders who humbly underspeak about themselves are so attractive to follow? And we talked about, again, we don't want to follow arrogant people. And so we want people who want to care for other people. One of the great ways, I told you, every time I would go to a camp or anything else, I always was the last person as a leader to eat, because I wanted other people to make sure that they know that they were important. And I'm not going to go to the front of the line. I could say, hey, I'm really busy, I'm going to go to the front of the line. But that's something I picked to say, you know what? No, I care about all of you, and I think you guys should be first, and we should do that together. So we ended up just reminding ourselves is when we underspeak in regard to our value, others are drawn toward us and our influence increases. When we overspeak, others are repelled. When it comes to self-description, leaders know people will fill what is lacking and empty what is too full. The idea there is that people will say things about you. And if you are arrogant, they will tend to not pay attention to you. Honestly, if you are not arrogant and not talking about yourself all the time, then they will be more apt to listen to you and listen to what you have to say. I reminded everybody at the end of that we're going to have a quiz tomorrow on humility, and just kind of you reflecting on what does it mean to you to have a leader who is a humble leader and why they are. So it's kind of what your journal was about. I'm going to give you a little quiz so you can tell me why you think this quality is important yourself. Remember, you're finishing your community partner email. You can get that turned in. Again, if nobody responded to you, then just put the email that you sent in that assignment along with 2 ideas that you might consider for your service project based on what you're interested in right now. We finished class with going over our virtual community service projects. Each group met with me and we talked about what they're doing, so you guys should be moving ahead on that. And that's what we did today. Tomorrow in class on day 3, we're going to have the quiz about humility. I'm going to let you actually do your projects and finish up any work you needed to do this week for this class. All right, have a great day and hopefully see you in class. Henry, we're thinking about you, hoping you're doing well. Bye-bye.